Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of Paul Brown Show. This evening, my guests will be Ms. Michelle Houts and Mr. Darnell Badger. They're two public speakers, professional public speakers, who's going to answer the questions of becoming a more effective speaker. How y'all doing today?
We are doing well.
Great.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous aujourd'hui? Je m'appelle Michelle. Now, unless you speak French, you probably don't know what I said. What I said was, hello, how are you today? My name is Michelle. My point is this: if the person or persons you're talking to don't understand what you're saying, your message is worthless. Now, in day-to-day life, that may not be so important when you're going into Starbucks to order your latte, but there's one place that most people go that is very imperative that they speak effectively and communicate the message they want to be heard. That's in the job interview. Let me give you an example.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me say I'm gonna go interview with Darnell here, and I walk in. Yo, boss man, hook me up with the paycheck. Chances are really good I'm not gonna get that job. But let's say I walk in and say, good morning, Mr. Badger. My name is Michelle Houts, and I am great with customers. I would be such an asset for your company. I really would like this job. I hope you hire me. Chances are you're gonna get that job, even over possibly someone with better job skills, because you communicated yourself in a positive way, in an effective way, in a way the manager saw you in a good light and understood what you said.
Okay, one of the questions I would like to ask is, how long have you been a professional public speaker? First yourself, Michelle.
Well, actually, we're all public speakers and we're all salespeople from the day we start talking. I've been doing this as a professional speaker for about 5 years now, but we all, at some point in time, have to be able to talk effectively around other people, even if it's one or two people. And some people are uncomfortable doing that. So our goal is to make people more effective speakers in any environment.
Okay, how about yourself, Darnell?
It's been a little over 4 years now. So I've had an opportunity to speak at a lot of different places through whether it be Toastmasters or other organizations. I've had invitations to speak at engineering associations. So it's been about 4 years now that I've actually had opportunities to connect with audiences.
What inspired you to want to become a public speaker?
For myself, I work in the insurance industry, and I've gotten to a point in my career that I wanted to teach risk management. And I've been to enough seminars and enough classes to see people falling asleep. I didn't want to be one of those speakers. So I joined Toastmasters to improve my speaking skills so that when I do go into a classroom, that I can inspire and motivate my students.
How about yourself?
Well, I think it started a couple of years back. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I have a family of ministers. My mother is a minister, my uncle's a minister, my stepfather's a minister, and I knew I didn't want to be a minister. But I felt I had some sort of a gift in that area. I've always been encouraged in that area, so I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I made a conscious decision to hone and work on my skills as a speaker and develop and cultivate that talent. And it led me to public speaking more than anything else. I know ministers are public speakers. They're all public speakers. I just didn't feel that I was called in that particular area, but I knew there was a device or an area that I could go into, and I felt like this is it.
I know one of the problems that I have when I'm in public speaking is using How do I stop from making that that's just something I do. I mean, I don't know why.
Everyone does. It's a filler. When you either are trying to recall what you want to say or you're trying to think of something to say, everyone tends to say And we practice not doing those things when they're pointed out to people. Like I used to pick at my clothes and flick my hair, but because someone pointed it out to me, I have less of a tendency to do that. So what we try and do instead of or hum is pause. A pause can be very powerful. If you're giving a very exciting speech and you pause, it gives the audience time to register what you said and anticipate what you're going to say.
Okay. How about yourself?
I mean, she pretty much, that's the answer to the question. I mean, so in terms of speaking, I think you just need to really make a conscious decision to pay attention to it. I think most people don't pause in those situations. What I would encourage folks to do is to record themselves, listen to themselves, and be aware of it, and then make a conscious decision to pause as opposed to using or filler word to get from that point to the next. I think it's natural for us to do those things. The real question is, how often do you do it? And oftentimes I hear it over and over and over, and that repetition of it takes away from your overall message. So record yourself, listen to yourself, and then feel with the pause. There's a certain amount of professionalism that comes with the pause.
Okay. One of the things another thing I have an issue is talking with my hands. Hand movement. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
When you're speaking, you need to be natural. Everyone has their own style. I'm a hands person. But you need to have purposeful movement. The same when you're usually doing a speech, you're usually standing. And in Toastmasters, we learn that we have a certain stage that we want to be on this part, all parts of the stage to be utilized, but not just randomly. There has to be a purpose for it.
Okay.
So.
How about those butterflies? That stage fright. Oh God, that's a real big thing for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important. It kind of reminds me of when I was in the 3rd grade, I had to recite the preamble. I remember that day as if it were today. I'm standing in front of my class, and instead of reciting the preamble, I sang the preamble. It went like this: "We the people of the United States." And then one of my friends, Brian, he looks at me and starts to grin. So I paused and I hesitated for a moment. "A more perfect union." And before I knew it, the whole class erupted in laughter. Now, I was devastated. I remember walking back to my desk and looking at another one of my friends, and he just shook his head. I mean, he was just as embarrassed of me as I was myself. When I got home that afternoon, I ran into the kitchen to my house, and my mom was cooking. And I said, Mama, they laughed at me today. And she said, well, why did they laugh? And I said, well, Mama, I think it's because I sang rather than recited the preamble. And she said, well, what could you have done better? I said, I don't know, not saying. And if you were there sitting next to me, standing next to me in that kitchen, in the frying pan, the fried chicken fried in the frying pan, and the rice bubbling on the stove, you would have heard my mother say something that I never forgot. Very simplistic in its words, but she said that perfect practice makes perfect. And that's something that I've used throughout my life, whether it was public speaking or anything, basketball or sports. Practice is really what makes perfect. So if you were to ask me how you overcome those butterflies, it is the repetition of it all. It is to do it over and over and over again until you can really say that you have some comfort in that area. So it's about perfect practice.
Okay. Now, when you had a bad public speaking appearance and you did a bad job, how do you get yourself back up and doing another one? You know what I'm saying? I mean, sometimes you did a bad speech, and you're like, oh God.
Are you referring to after the speech or during the speech?
After, during, I mean, what I'm saying? It's like, how do you get yourself back up to doing another one after that performance right there?
Okay, so just a moment ago, we talked about overcoming our fears. One of the key components is repetition, but another key component is positive self-talk. You need to speak positively into your life, right? So, hey, this is, you're going to fail a lot of times in life, and that's where success comes from. Learn from that experience and go back out and try it again. But the last piece of that, I believe that's really, really important outside of, to get that self-confidence area, outside of positive self-talk, outside of is surrounding yourself with the right people. So it's important that if you fail at something, you surround yourself with the right people that's going to encourage you, pick you back up, and talk about the things that you did really, really well, and talk about those opportunities, but help you to get up that next time to present again.
And I'd like to say, once you do have a bad experience and you have encouraging, supportive people to point it out to you, you remember next time not to do that again. And your next speech, your first one might have kind of bombed, the next one will shine.
That's a good advice. Good advice. Does telling a story in your speech makes a difference, matters?
Yes, actually, Darnell has a great story about that happened to him.
Yeah, so telling a story I think is really important. You want to tell a story and make a point. And we all grew up hearing stories. And if you really want to move somebody, tell a great story. I can tell you that when I interview for jobs, I use storytelling more so than I do just the normal responses. The question, let me give you an example. That age-old question is, why should I hire you? So for me, people look at me, I'm 6'3", and they can imagine this person who play basketball. So I play into that, right? You ask me, why should I hire you? I say for a couple different reasons. And I'm a leader. I manage people. I've done that for a number of years in the sales arena. And one of the things I always share with them, I say, just imagine me, I'm going to this basketball court, and for whatever reason, I got my sneakers on my shoulders, and I arrive to a pickup, on the court, and there's really two teams out there. There's a team that we'll just call Super Friends. This is a group of guys who they have a point guard, they have a center. That's one of the best teams you can possibly imagine. And there's another team full of misfits. They just walked out there, picked up 5 people who they didn't know, with a random team, and we'll call them the misfits. And for whatever reason, I had my sneakers. I was thinking to myself, well, this is going to be a quick game. Let me go ahead and start putting my sneakers on. And this team full of Super Friends, they took off. The score was 7-0 before you knew it, right? Yeah. But on this team full of misfits, there was one individual on that team, got a rebound, right? He pushed it up the court and he passed it to another gentleman. The gentleman hit the shot and he said, great shot, right? He came back down court, they played a little bit more defense. The score is now 7-1. The other team came down, scored again, right? Mm-hmm. But the other person got the rebound, passed it up to him. He took the shot, it went in, and the other guy said, good shot, right? So what ultimately happened is that team progressed from 2-7 to 3-7 to 4-7. Correct. And you know what happened? Ultimately, they won. Now, this individual didn't have a whistle. He wasn't the coach of that team. He was an individual who decided to take the lead, take those steps to encourage the individuals on the team. They turned into a team that could be really, really successful without any organization just randomly picking some folks. This other team who had played together began to unravel. You know the story. Why are you not checking that man? Who has him? You're not doing. And before you know it, that team full of this one individual who decided to take the lead, he won. He helped them to win that game. Okay. So my point there is that when you hire me, you hire a leader, an individual who doesn't need a whistle or a coach, need to be the coach to come in and be a leader on your team. And that's why you should hire me. So I use it as an example to say, to kind of impress upon the person I'm talking to that I'm the right person through a story rather than just to say, I'm this great leader.
Now, Michelle, if I'm going through an interview, do you think it's effective for me to tell a story when I'm going through this interview? I mean, or you think I should just, as an employer, tell him exactly what he wants to hear?
No, I think it's important that you tell a story because they need to know who you are and you need to be prepared. What I mean by that is you need to know yourself. You need to know what your interests are, what your background is, why you would be a good person for that job. And a story always illustrates that because people want to, in other words, say, prove it. Your story proves it.
In your opinion, what's the most important factor in an interview?
The most important factor?
Correct.
Knowing yourself. Being able to, you're not going to be able to answer their questions. They're going to be impromptu questions. There'll be some that everybody asks the same question, but then there's going to be questions you don't expect, you're not ready for. So make sure you're ready for it. You don't have to know exactly what a question is to be able to answer it. You can practice what you know, like I said, as far as what your interests are, your background is. Look at the current news. That's always an option for conversation.
And yourself?
I would argue that, especially nowadays, a lot of the questions that you received in the interview format are situational, behavioral based. And
Correct.
so, one of the things you want to try to do is think about these specific situations, these actions that you took and the results of those actions. I think if you can create sort of an outline of those things, it's going to help the individual who receiving that message better understand what it is. So whether it's last Monday, I was involved with this team, right? That's the situation, right? The action I took. While I was on that team, we played a